Shut up! The Footy's on Triple M!
This is a Triple M Footy news update
This is massive, this story. Got a little exclusive.
with Tom Browne.
Yep, that's right. You're listening to the Triple M Footy News Update with Tommy Browne. My name's Rudy Edsel. I'm conducting the things here. I've got Tommy Browne over there. How are you, Tommy?
Great to be with you this morning, Rudy. It's another big day in football. Lots to discuss.
Indeed. How was your off-season, mate? Haven't spoken to you on Triple M for a while. How are you?
Massive off-season. We've got little Henry on board, so that's been going well, and that's been the focus. I need to keep my eyes on the ball, but it's hard leaving the house because he's super cute and he's 8 weeks old.
He's 8 weeks old, so he's proper little. That's you getting much sleep, mate?
Yeah, I am. Tara's doing the bulk of the heavy lifting overnight because I'm still obviously working during the day. So we're trying to strike a balance. I'm very lucky that I've got a great partner.
She does a lot of work, mate. She does a lot of work. All right, let's get stuck straight into the footy news, as I said. And obviously the biggest news in town, Tommy, is Paddy Dangerfield, 3 weeks for a bump on Jake Kelly that ended in a head clash and a broken nose and a concussion for the Crows player. But you spoke to Danger yesterday after the tribunal.
Yeah, the planets aligned, Rudy. Players traditionally aren't that wrapped after they're given 3 weeks by the tribunal. Obviously, Danger was arguing in favour of 2, but he was good enough to stop for us on 7 News last night. And he spoke to me and basically gave me a live interview on air. And just by way of reference, by the time you get to Geelong, wait for the tribunal. You never know how long that's going to take for him to come out at precisely the right time. And as we went to the break, I didn't know that he was down. He was coming down the lift or whether he was still up in the Cats boardroom. The background there is that Danger was appearing via video link because of COVID. That's the way the tribunal works at the moment. And he gave an account for us on the news about what happened and his view on the bump. He doesn't think the bump's dead. But it's pretty obvious the takeaway from this, Rudy, is that even if you're applying a low, well-applied bump to the body that results in contact to the head, particularly where the injury, in this case Kelly, had severe concussion, that was the word used in the hearing, severe, particularly where the player has severe concussion, you're now looking at 3 weeks. There's no doubt that that's severe, even if obviously the head contact is accidental, which it was in this instance. So it's another test case for severe contact and another test case. The AFL's massive at the moment on concussion. There's looming litigation, potentially a class action against the AFL, and players that do that this season are going to be in trouble.
Yeah, so the upshot of it all was that the tribunal had found it was severe impact, and Dangerfield was trying to argue it down to high. He'd sort of suggested yesterday or the day before when he'd spoken, he suggested he would argue that he had no choice but to bump, but they just couldn't get it down to high. Basically, was the problem.
No, he wasn't arguing to get off. He was just arguing for it to go to 3 back to 2 weeks, which is high rather than severe. And he basically argued that he applied a well executed bump, as per the textbook, low, but a few things went against him, in particular Kelly's injury, also Danger's acceleration prior to the moment, the fact that his feet were off the ground at that particular moment, and it's the standard certainly going forward that you just can't do that. So it's 3 weeks, and that stands. An interesting moment after the hearing, and I know this is a lot of players do this, but we'd basically left it. We were driving out of the car park, and a few fans had gone past Danger, and there was no one in sight down at Geelong. It was empty, but a family wandered past, and he made a point of basically going to the other side of the netball courts at Geelong to give them some signed gear. It wasn't a PR exercise. He just did that out of the goodness of his heart. He had no idea that anyone was watching. He's a good person, Danger. I know that he copped some backlash on social media, perhaps from some Crows fans, but he's an absolute beauty and one of the great people in the game, in my opinion.
I am a Geelong fan myself, Tommy, so you don't need to argue too much to tell me that Paddy Dangerfield's a good man. Now, speaking of Dangerfield, and he's obviously the head of the AFLPA and the players group, the players, that is, not necessarily the PA, are pushing for a return to their sort of old pay levels, you tell me.
Yeah, Wednesday morning, the players' agents are all meeting in Fitzroy, and one of the items I understand at the top of their agenda is the CBA, which is the pay agreement. Players agreed to take a 3.5% pay cut this year. Agents are pushing for a return to the agreed amount next year in 2022, back to what was basically originally promised pre-COVID. Now, there's a few issues with this. A, the AFL hasn't got visibility on the crowds and stuff like that at the moment, so they'll say, well, hang on, we need some more time. And B, the crowds haven't really returned in droves just yet, so we're going to get a big test tomorrow night. I've sort of got some interesting points on that. I mean, the AFL, I think, need to educate the fans that there's capacity at these grounds now. All the language has been around there being a cap. there are tickets this weekend. That's absolutely the situation, and I think fans also have to get their heads around having to pre-purchase. So they go through the membership categories, then get into the general categories. You might not be able to get the tickets at the times you used to buy them, but the AFL's just got to work through that situation, and that will feed into the pay discussion because the crowds need to come back, the clubs need to get the money back for the players to get what they were getting paid. But I can report they're pushing for a return to full pay for next year. There was a 3.5% cut this year. It's also relevant for the free agents, a couple of the big ones. At the moment, obviously, Bontempelli, Marcus Bontempelli says he's waiting on the salary cap before making a decision on extending at the Bulldogs beyond this year. And Paddy Cripps is the same. He sort of said, well, I'm waiting on visibility on the cap. I think Cripps is also just waiting to make sure that Carlton's not a basket case, and there's certainly no signs of that based on their pretty impressive performance against Richmond, albeit a reasonable margin. They did look pretty good last Thursday night.
Yes, they were very, very impressive, Carlton. You mentioned that the fans getting used to the new ticket process, and I can sort of vouch for that to an extent. It's hard to wrap your head around what you have to do to get tickets now. It's moved so far away from being able to buy tickets at the door, obviously, but having to sort of go in queues and wait for ticket
You've got to prepay them, don't you? Pre-buy them.
Yeah, pretty much.
And it goes through categories. So, for example, it's the members, then the away members, then the general admin, and the general admission might not be until a day, for example, before the game.
Yeah, and I know that a lot of fans that I know of all clubs have have said, I'll wait till it gets more normal or easier. So I think that's partly why crowds may have been down in the first week.
And the other factor is last year people got so used to watching it on TV too.
That's right, yeah. So, yeah, as you said, it's an interesting test for the AFL there, and they'll...
what do you think they'll get tomorrow? I reckon they'll get 52 or 53,000 tomorrow night.
Carlton Collingwood, I reckon that they'll get 60. I just feel like they'll get 60.
That'd be a good result.
It would be an extremely good result.
Melbourne's crowd was particularly disappointing last weekend, 21,000. Gary Pert had flagged 40 or 50,000. The Demons supporters, I reckon they've got a good side, the Demons. Harms actually has injured his wrist this morning, but they've got a good side, the Demons.
Just to push back on that a touch, I think that I feel that that's a touch harsh on just a little bit harsh on Melbourne because it was versus Freo, and it's typically not a high-drawing game. But I understand why they may have been, or the footy public may have been a bit disappointed.
Well, they've got St Kilda this weekend, so they need to get out.
Yeah, at Marvel, I think that one. So very interesting, that one. Selection news on a Wednesday there. Tommy, we sort of chatted off air a little bit, and some of the injury subbed guys are pushing to come back and play this week. Nick Flostone, obviously one of them, Sam Menegola, but Flostone, will he, won't he? What do you think?
I think he will. It remains to be seen. He got officially it was like a jarred knee or a corked knee. Sam Menegola had a shoulder injury. Actually had to get his jumper cut off at the game, and he couldn't lift his shoulder, I was told, on Monday and Tuesday. But Geelong's applied to the AFL for him to have the ability to play. I think Geelong sources I spoke to think it's a bit outrageous, this sort of whodunit as to whether a player's faking or not faking, whether clubs are gaming these injury situations, because the club doctor has to make the decision. So I guess you've got to very much assume that there's huge integrity around their decisions. And the example that was given to me was Steve Johnson in the 2011 grand final. He had bone on bone that week with his knee, and most people didn't think he'd walk for 2 or 3 months. And then that week, lo and behold, played a major role in the grand final. So players can get up.
I, again, a Geelong fan, remember it well. So you've got a bit of line on sight on Ollie Henry, the debutant from the Pies.
I have a feeling he'll go back to the VFL this week. He had a bit of a quiet debut. I think he'll go back to the VFL. A lot of discussion today around Eddie Betts. So Carlton will bring back Zach Williams from suspension. They'll bring back Jack Martin from that calf minor setback. And there's some talk that Carlton could make 3 changes and bring Betts back as well. I'm not sure where they'd find room, to be frank with you, but that's he's definitely one of Teague's, I wouldn't say favourite players, but preferred players. And I think Teague would like him to be in their best 22, and he could provide Collingwood, especially in greasy conditions, expected tomorrow night with another headache.
Yes, and speaking of best 22s, Max King.
He'll be back this week from concussion, and his golf ball incident, Rudy, at the Brighton golf course there. Apparently, I'm told that was a shank at right angles, and it hit him in the temple, which I suggested on social media can be fatal. Now, everyone said to me, oh, how dare you sort of dramatise it. A golf ball to the temple is a big problem, and he was actually quite lucky in the end.
Yes, that's why he missed, I suppose. And then you've got an update for us on Michael Hurley.
Yes, Essendon released an update on Hurls yesterday, just saying that he's at the club and he's sort of working towards getting better, and that they're all encouraging signs that he's in at the club. I'm told from a source that he's desperate to play on and play another game. He clearly misses footy. He's really the lifeblood of that team. He's in the leadership group. He's just an infectious personality. I'm also told, though, that infection in his hip and his leg, which he sort of discovered, I'm told, just by being sore, it's still there. So it's a massive health concern, as Essendon's alluded to, and I certainly can't see him playing football anytime soon. And when I was at the Carlton practice game that Essendon played in a couple of weeks ago, a lot of our listeners would have seen that vision on the news. He's lost all that weight, the definition out of his jaw. He looks as white as a ghost.
Yeah.
It just shows how perilously placed our bodies are, Rudy. And he's got that infection, which is a big concern.
Yes, we're all hoping to see him back on the park at some point this year because he's one of the favourites of in footy, I think. Now, Tommy Browne, just before we go, I'd love a big prediction out of you.
If Collingwood lose to Carlton tomorrow night, the early stage of the pressure will come on Nathan Buckley. The interesting part for this, in my opinion, is the fact that there's no obvious person to assess that pressure at Collingwood. They're a bit of a rudderless ship from a board perspective at the moment because the board's essentially, I wouldn't say it's infighting, but it's split on the issue of a successor. They haven't released yet who the successor will be. Mark Corder, the interim co-president, spoke at their function last Friday night and didn't say anything about the succession plan. So I think that they're a little bit rudderless off the field. Having said that, on the field, they've got Graham Wright, they've got Bucks, who hopefully can get them, for Collingwood supporters' sake, back on track on Thursday night. But Graham Wright, their footy manager, is going to have a huge influence over this season because off-field, I'm a little bit concerned they're lacking some direction.
Yes, it's a wait and see on that one, big time with the Pies, isn't it?
And just one on for Pies fans. Nick Dacos played in I think a VFL practice game last Saturday morning that a lot of club recruiters were at. And I think the prevailing view at this stage is that but for the fact that Collingwood will get him, obviously, as a father-son selection, he'd be number one in the draft. Now, it's early days in the season, but that's the size of the wraps on him. He was born on the 3rd of January. He would have been drafted last year, but for those 3 days.
And he's somehow, remarkably, a Carlton fan, which is something you don't associate with the name Dacos, is it?
He's a great kid as well. He was at the Paul Connors draft sort of academy at the Sorrento Oval over Christmas, and Jamara was there as well, actually. They were snagging goals from the car park pocket, and Nick came up to me, and he's a great young guy, so good luck to him.
Looking forward to seeing him turn out for the Pies next year. But I think that's just about enough for us for today. Tommy, we'll be back, I think, Friday for another chat just to go through all the big news. And as you know, the news in footy never stops. Thanks heaps, Tommy Browne.
Thanks, Rudy.
See you next time.